Hello, welcome to WOLFpak TV. I'm your host, Wendy Fortino, and I'm here with the one and only, the international sensation, Drew Manning, who went from fit to fat to fit. And you've probably seen him on his famous TV show on Lifetime. You've probably heard about his story, and we're going to talk about everything that went into that. So Drew, how are you doing today?
Wendy Fortino, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh man, it honestly, like, we have so much to dive into, but like I told you, I think that the best place to start is just to kind of give our audience a refresh and a little bit into your story. So the first thing that I want to do actually is I want to share with all of our audience a little bit of your story.
Sure.
Drew Manning, he's a personal fitness trainer.
The extreme experiment of Drew Manning.
One man is taking a journey from being fit to getting fat.
So no exercise for 6 months, and I basically live off the typical American diet of processed foods.
Hard rock, muscles, everything else, very lean. And you thought, I'm going to put on 70 pounds.
Let's see my waist. Let's see. Okay, so I'm still at around 47.5 inches.
I used to think health and fitness was just working out and eating healthy food until I put on 75 pounds on purpose. So back when I did Fit2Fat2Fit the first time, I had this idea as a personal trainer and someone who had never been overweight a day in my life. I decided to get fat on purpose. And I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds ridiculous. I put on 75 pounds in 6 months to gain a better understanding of what it's like to be overweight for the first time in my life. I was so obsessed with what my body looked like on the outside. I think so many of us growing up insecure in our 20s and 30s, we try and fit in. We want our body to look a certain way on the outside to be accepted by society. And I bought into that lie. I bought into that myth that I am my body, that my body image is my self-image. And so many of us don't know how to detach from that. And it wasn't until I did Fit2Fat2Fit and was truly humbled from that experience, I wasn't as obsessed anymore. But it's about health now. And it's about being able to play with my daughters, being able to stay active and not feeling like my body's breaking down and it's hard. We give up on ourselves because we don't see the results. We're doing it just for the results, thinking those results are going to bring me happiness. You have to learn how to be fulfilled from within first and foremost before you can go after these outside sources of happiness. And so that's what this program is about. I turned 40 at the end of this year and I am embarking on this journey again. Why am I doing this? Well, a couple of reasons. I realized that in the fitness industry, there is a huge lack of empathy. And I feel like so many people struggle because their perception of health and fitness is wrong. It's skewed. It's based on what marketing shows them. They think they need to be skinny to be loved. They think they need to look a certain way, to have muscles, to have a six-pack in order to be accepted by society. And so many people are chasing after this outside thing that they think is going to bring them happiness, when in reality, they're just stuck in a rat race where they're just going on a hamster wheel over and over again, the same thing, thinking if I try this diet or if I try that diet and I get this body, then I'll finally love myself. Then all my problems will go away. I turned 40 on December 27th, 2020. As you get older, your hormones change, it gets harder, your metabolism changes. And once you hit 40, a lot of people believe that you just can't maintain weight loss anymore. It's harder to lose weight. And I totally get that. And I would be putting that to the test. If we could get people to shift their perception of what success looks like, then they can learn to love themselves where they're at now while they're continuing to work on their health more. Once you fall in love with the process of treating your body kindly, showing it love, you're gonna be so much more fulfilled with where you're at in life. So that's what.
Oh my gosh, Drew. God, like it like touches me more every time I watch and hear your story. You've probably rehashed this so many times. So we're gonna dive into this. I want to know, because even if you've talked about this multiple times, now your experience with that process, even reflecting back now, is probably different, right?
100%.
So why don't we start from the beginning? So tell me the very first time that you decided to do this before anyone knew that you were going to do it. Tell me what was going through your mind.
Yeah, this was back in like 2011 or so. And I had a full-time job in the medical field. And, but I was a part-time personal trainer at this time. And I remember I was driving to the hospital to do a surgery. And I was thinking of ideas, because a little bit of backstory about me that you have to understand is I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and we all played sports. And so for me, I grew up my entire life in shape. So here it was, typical personal trainer, never been overweight a day in my life, trying to help people who were overweight pretty much the majority of their life. And in my mind, it seems so easy just to be in shape. All you have to do is eat less and work out and do it. And like, you just have the discipline and you have the willpower to put down the junk food and just move your body, right? And I was like, why do my clients struggle? Like, why can't they stay consistent? Why do they keep going back to these old habits and these old patterns? And one of my clients at the time told me, he's like, Drew, you don't understand what it's like for me or for people like me, because for you, it's always been easy. But for me, it's hard. And I kind of took that to heart. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I don't understand. I can't understand why it's so hard. It seems so simple. Then this idea popped up when I was driving to the hospital of like, what if, I know it sounds crazy, what if you got fat on purpose and documented the journey? Maybe that would give me a better understanding. And so I came up with this idea of Fit2Fat2Fit, where for 6 months I would stop exercising completely. I would eat a standard American diet and I would monitor my weight gain. And then I would try and get back to fit and, document that journey. And that's all the idea was initially. I didn't know the TV shows were going to happen and the book deals and all this, the success that came from it. But that was kind of the genesis of Fit2Fat2Fit, of why I decided to, gain a better understanding of what it was like to be overweight for the first time in my life. And that's kind of ultimately what happened was, you saw the journey.
It's crazy. Do you remember when we had a little conversation? You were in the middle. I don't know, how many seasons did you do of that show on Lifetime?
2 seasons. Well, the first season was on A&E actually, and the second season got moved to Lifetime for whatever reason.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I jumped ahead a little bit because I want to talk about that. We're really just talking about you right now. But I remember I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit because I remember when you asked me, would you seriously do it? And I said, no. You said, I don't blame you. You said, it's hard AF. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And you hadn't done it the second time yet.
No, that was just the first time that I had done it. And it was I think everyone that on the show also realized just how hard it was and how humbling it was. Yeah. And that's really what the value of doing it gave me, was that different perspective of more empathy, more respect, a better understanding. Right. It's still possible. Like, you still have to do hard things. But I think as a trainer, for me, it just opened up my eyes to just how wrong I was. And that in itself helped me gain a better understanding. I think people respect me more because they saw how hard it was for me. They saw my YouTube videos. They saw me struggle emotionally, as I went about this journey and talked about, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And you see the trainers on the show do the same thing. So I'm glad you didn't do it because it is hard.
Oh man, you shared something. There's one thing that you shared, and I want to show you really quickly because this was interesting to me. This actually really fascinated me. So I just want to watch this real quick.
This is not disturb. When these are on, you do not disturb me.
Blew me up with those tags in it. You know up.
We're not even on the same planet right now.
It's just so uncomfortable. I feel like I'm gonna burst.
Oh my God. You have man boobs.
Look at this. I just wear like long pants. I just don't want to do this anymore.
This is my health, my life. I'm scared to say all right now.
Millions of us are overweight.
Here we go.
We struggle to get fit and rely on experts to help us. But for every success story, there's also failure. I'm Drew Manning. I've successfully trained hundreds of clients to lose weight and get in shape.
This is the part I'm talking about.
My biggest failure was training my brother-in-law. He simply could not lose weight. No matter how hard I tried, I failed to help. That's when I realized I was the problem. I needed to walk in his footsteps. So I gained 75 pounds. I developed a fatty liver and the kidneys of an alcoholic. Together, we were able to lose the weight. It was incredibly hard, but it made me a better trainer and a better person. Now, 4 trainers are going on the same journey from fit to fit.
So that was what I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about your brother-in-law and how that inspired you.
Yeah, that relationship, I would get frustrated with him when I was before Fit2Fat2Fit because, I would see him at family functions and he would be eating the food that I told him not to eat. And I'm like, dude, why aren't you just doing what I told you to do? It's so easy. Like, you got to stop doing this. He's like, well, this or that. And I would get frustrated with him. And that's when he kind of told me, he's like, you don't understand. It's for you. It's, oh shoot, my camera just died. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. Oh my gosh, my camera just died. But can you still see me and hear me?
Yeah, this is live TV.
Guys. Sorry.
This is live television, baby.
Good
Things
now.
happen.
I'm still here. So anyways, yeah, that's when the conversation happened, and that's what stirred the idea of like, okay, what can I do to gain a better understanding? And I remember my wife at the time, we're divorced now, but she was pregnant, and I was telling her like, hey, I think I'm gonna do this. And she's like, so you're telling me we're gonna have junk food in the house, like finally? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I think we should totally do it, because she saw, because this was her sister's husband. And
Right.
so she saw the judgmental, you know, like how judgmental I was. And I grew up very judgmental in a very judgmental kind of high demand, strict religion that was, you know, I kind of consumed me. And that was my perspective, like, hey, like judging people.
Right.
And so like, you know, it was one of those things where she was like, yeah, I think you should do this. So. That's so crazy. There's not a lot of people that would be so self-aware enough to realize I'm the problem. And that was kind of what you came to this realization. And I think for me, I think what I can relate to is, and it's like a journey I've had to take too, as like a coach, as a trainer, somebody in the fitness industry, is we definitely tend to not put ourselves in other people's shoes. Sometimes we are on the path where it's a non-negotiable already, right? We are eating the right foods, we're exercising, we're doing all the right things. And when we see somebody not doing those things, like we are like, why don't you just do this? This is what works. And it is so crazy to take a step back and be so self-aware that you're like, because there's still a piece of you that is like, this can be done clearly, because you didn't just go from fit to fat to see how things would be for them. You were like, no, I'm going to go from fit to fat and then fit again, because I'm going to show that not only, you know, do I want to understand you, but I also want you to understand me. Right. 100%. Yeah. There was a lot of humbling lessons that came from fit to fat to fit. Right. You know, it totally changed my perspective, because until you go, like, this is what I believe experiences shape our beliefs. And until you have an experience that, let's say you have a belief about something, like my belief was transformation is easy. You just eat healthy food and you work out. And then I had this fit to fat to fit experience, which totally changed my paradigm, my perception of what it took to get fit. Yeah. And this is coming from someone who's been in shape my entire life. Like, I've never really had, you know, a phase where I let myself go. And like, I was bullied as a kid. Like, and that's what I'm saying is, like, I didn't really have an experience that taught me any different until I did Fit to Fat to Fit, which humbled me to the core and totally changed my perspective. This is why experiences that, you know, really are the things that are what's going to change people's minds. Because people like you and me, maybe that grew up in shape, for example, and telling people, here's what you need to do to get fit. Words don't really change that person until that person has an experience. Like, maybe they get diagnosed with something really severe, or someone close to them passes away because of their health. That's a wake-up call for them. And that experience shapes their life, puts them down a different trajectory in life. And ultimately, you could scream and yell and shame all you want a person, but until they have an experience that is going to be that motivating factor, it has to be an inside job. And that's what I've learned is, like, you know, I could do a Fit to Fat to Fit a million times and it still wouldn't change the world.
Could you though?
No, I couldn't. But like what I'm saying, if I did, it wouldn't still solve the problem. But, you know, I have so much empathy for people that get stuck, because you know, I really do see people who, you know, I don't see them as less than or weaker. I see, like, there's a good book that I love by Oprah called What Happened to You. It reframes the question of, instead of saying what's wrong with you, what's wrong with this person, why can't they just eat healthy and exercise, asking what happened to you. What life experiences have led you down this path, from the way you were raised, your parents, you know, friends, teachers, coaches, religious leaders, what happened to you that made you into who you are? And that's really what we should be asking, I think, as a society, is tell me your story. What happened to you? Let's understand you. And when people feel understood, then they're more willing to listen to what you as the coach have to say. But, you know, there's that Teddy Roosevelt quote, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's really
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, and that's really what Fit2Fat2Fit is all about. It's like you can have all the knowledge in the world, you can know everything about how to change someone's body composition, but until that person feels safe with you and feels understood and feels like you care about them, then and only then are they going to be willing to listen to you versus you just like shaming them and saying, you know, here's your macros and here's your calories and just do this. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just going to be the devil's advocate here real quick.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Because here's the thing, Drew, you sacrificed so much to do this. I mean, it's not realistic to be putting yourself in someone's shoes that hardcore. I mean, that is nuts. You know, I mean, it's a selfless act. And the next segue into that is I do want to talk about how that really did affect you and your life. And I'm sure it wreaked havoc on, you know, your personal relationships and things like that. And this is real life. You went into it to sacrifice all the things that you worked so hard for so that you could truly put yourself in someone else's shoes. I can't even imagine a more selfless act than what you did. So, I mean, I'm sure that I could, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. I mean, reflecting back, do you have any regrets or thoughts about how that affected you on a personal level? And share what you want, but if you want to, you can share how it did affect you.
Yeah, I have no regrets, first of all. Is it extreme? Yes. I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think everyone needs to do Fit2Fat2Fit to gain a better understanding. I chose to do it knowing the risks going into it of what it would entail. I didn't know it would have such an impact on me, especially mentally and emotionally. But at the end of the day, I learned so much from it. I really did. And I'm grateful for the perspective that I have now and the empathy that I have now. Even though it came at a cost, like my health bounced back, my body, you know, is pretty much the same. Meaning like I'm still lean, I'm still fit. I notice I have looser skin. You or most people probably wouldn't be able to tell by looking at my photos. You know, I don't really have any stretch marks, you know, to show. So I'm very fortunate that my body was able to bounce back, but with a completely different perspective. And yeah, it came at a cost, but you know, like I said, I don't think everyone needs to do something like this. I think gaining empathy can come in many different ways, but whatever helps you develop empathy, I think it might be worth it in the end to understand someone's perspective. You don't need to completely jump into their shoes like I did. Like I said, it's risky. And like, you know, not everyone on the TV show made the cut because it's extreme and you're putting your body at risk. But you know, there are some things in life that are worth it, that I think that it give you that perspective that changes your perception, and then you can actually relate to someone, and then when they feel related to, they're more willing to listen and change their ways. Does that make sense?
It totally does. You are forever going to be coined as Fit2Fat2Fit. I think that is your. I do want to talk about the show. I jumped ahead a little bit on that, but what I want to talk about first is when this whole phenomenon took off. Like, you decided to do this. You didn't do it because you were trying to get famous. You were genuinely doing it because you wanted to prove something to yourself, and you want to gain empathy for the people that you felt like you didn't understand their perspective. So all of that was done without the intention, but the fame came along for the ride. So you were featured on multiple talk shows. When this whole thing took off, I want to know how that felt. Like, what was going through your mind when all this was taking off? Because here you are with Jay Leno, for example. And, you know, talk to me about this, because this would be nuts if this was me.
Sure. So here's the story behind how it went viral and how it affected me.
Okay.
You know, I went into this with the intention of just doing the experiment. I had no connections to Jay Leno or Dr. Oz or Good Morning America. Like, I had no media connections or publicists. I was just a dude who was living in Utah, married with 2 kids, just kind of winging it, not really knowing what I was doing. And, you know, people got wind of my story, and podcasters and fitness bloggers started interviewing me. And boom, one of the interviews showed up on yahoo.com. And I remember I was in surgery, so my phone was off. And then I get out of surgery and I have text messages, voicemails from people from high school, producers of every show you could think of. Like, we want to have you on. My parents are calling me like, hey, Dr. Oz's producers called. They're trying to get a hold of you. Somehow they got our number. It was chaos. It was my website shut down because it showed up on yahoo.com. And on the very front page of yahoo.com, I had a picture of me, fitness trainer becomes obese. People were like, what the heck? And so they were trying to get a hold of me. So it was a whirlwind. I was married at the time. My wife and I were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. What do we do? And so we just, we kind of just like did the best we could with navigating that, like all the attention that it got, and everyone wanted to have us on their shows. And it was crazy. It was like that 15 minutes of fame, like where like everyone wanted to have me on. It was intense and a lot. And honestly, like I feel like I thrive in the moment of being thrown in the spotlight. And, like when on Jay Leno, that was the first show I did. And that's not live, but you're in front of a live audience.
Right.
And
that's crazy.
Goes over the skit with you and like what Jay's gonna ask you. And I was on Chelsea Handler, and she was sitting next to me. And so like there was some banter back and forth, like with Jay and her about me. It was kind of embarrassing a little bit, but it was awkward. And like everyone was laughing. It was really funny. He basically said, those photos that Jay's holding up right now?
Yeah.
He asked Chelsea, so if he was your boyfriend, what week would you stop doing him? Oh! Like I was married, and I was like, my parents were watching, and everyone was like,
what did she say?
She was like, she paused, and everyone was like clapping and laughing, and she's like, I can't answer that. And because it was awkward. She didn't know me, I didn't know her. But anyways, it was funny. Everyone laughed. But it was a wild ride. And that totally changed my life, because I got a book deal that happened where I didn't quit my job in the medical field to pursue Fit2Fat2Fit full time. Write my book.
I have a quick question about this really fast. I want to hear what you're saying right now, but really fast. I just want to ask a quick question. Was this your first time doing Fit2Fat2Fit or your second?
This was the first time in 2011.
Okay, so he had you on the show before you even got fit again. I mean, no offense, but it doesn't look like you got fit yet.
Yeah, no, that was me one of my heaviest points was right there.
So he brought you on his show after you had gotten fat, but you hadn't got fit yet.
Yeah, yep.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you're like, I hope I make it happen.
That's the thing. I did a media tour at my fattest just because people wanted to see me. And then I did it again when I lost the weight, and I did a big review.
Did that motivate you? That must have motivated you to get fit again, because you're like, oh my God, all these people are watching me now.
Well, I had to. I had the book title. I had all these appearances scheduled. So I was like, I got to be strict and I got to be disciplined. So it was a motivation for me for sure. So anyways, does that answer your question?
Yeah. So you went from the whirlwind. This is fascinating to me now. Okay. This actually unlocks a whole nother for me, because as somebody, I'm a competitive bodybuilder, I don't know if you saw my Instagram or whatever, but we have deadlines. So if I'm getting ready for a contest, I have to be dialed in on a very specific day. And my motivation is I want to win, right?
Yeah.
You kind of had the same fire under your butt for doing this, because you're on these shows. You're on Jay Leno. You're on, Dr. Oz. You're on Piers Morgan. You're on all these shows, and you still have to get fit.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of pressure, but that's the thing, is it kept me accountable. It definitely motivated me. Plus the thousands of people watching my blog and my YouTube videos and my Facebook of updates, and like, is he gonna do it? Can he do it?
Yeah.
And that's helpful. And I think everyone on their own journey should also find accountability. It doesn't mean you have to go on a TV show, but staying accountable to people can be very motivating. So whether you sign up for like a Spartan race or a 5K or a 10K or a bodybuilding competition where you have a date set, you have money put down, and then you have to, walk the walk and put your money where your mouth is. And that is very motivating for people. And I think that's one piece of advice I would give people out there listening, that maybe don't have access to the getting on TV shows. There's other ways of doing it, of staying accountable.
I mean, this is actually a really good segue into the show, because You had the accountability, you had the book deal, you had all these interviews, you had this motivational factor that is so extreme. It had to happen. And you were like, you know what? I want other people to have the same level of motivation that I had. So you tell me about what went into your decision. How I want to know the behind the scenes on how the show first launched.
Yeah, the show came from once I wrote the book came out, and then a production company out of LA reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we saw you on Jay Leno. We have an idea for a TV show. We want to team up with you." And I'm like, totally foreign to the TV industry and how all that works. So basically, we signed a deal to go pitch an idea for a TV show. And this is the funny thing is a lot of people don't know this, but the backstory, the original idea for the TV show was completely different than what you see on Lifetime and A&E. It was supposed to be a Biggest Loser competition style, like on a resort where people had to compete to gain weight, and kind of like the trainers had to compete to gain the weight, right? And then vote it off, and then the clients that they would team up with had to like compete to lose the weight, like you see on Biggest Loser. And we pitched it to all the big networks. I went with them to like Fox and NBC and ABC, and we pitched it to all of the executives there, and everybody said no. No one picked it up. Yeah, it was a good idea. No one picked it up, and it was dead in water for about 2 years. Nothing happened.
What year was that?
2013, maybe.
Wow.
No. This was 2012. Sorry, 2012.
Okay.
And then in 2014, the producer from the executive from the production company said, "Hey, we want to repitch this. There's new executives at some networks. We're going to go see what we can find. Are you okay with if we repitch this?" I'm like, "Yeah, 100%. And then 2 weeks later, he calls. He's like, "Good news, A&E bought the show." And I was like, "Awesome. What does that mean?" So basically, and then it got turned into a docuseries, like you see here.
Yeah.
It was more of like a docu-series instead of like a competition style weight loss show. And it was on A&E for one season, then Lifetime. Does that answer your question?
I was obsessed with the show. Yes. I was absolutely obsessed with the show. I loved how it went down, to be honest. I just remember the trainer would come in just down to go and take this challenge on, and then the person they were helping, they were all in right from the beginning. And then I just remember the trainer would be gorging themselves with food, and at first they'd get excited because I could see getting excited about eating like Twinkies and muffins and pizza for like a couple days. I'd be like, yeah, like this is the life. But then, oh God, it would be so difficult. And some of them really struggled to gain weight. And then obviously you had clients who really struggled to take the process on. Behind the scenes, are there any stories that you want to share that are unique, that really stand out to you?
With like the contestants on the show?
I will say there was one. There was one where, and tell me if you remember this one, but this particular one, the trainer really struggled to get the client to take on the challenge. He didn't finish the challenge. I think she did her part, but he didn't do his part.
Yeah.
And it was really emotional.
Very much for you.
Yeah, he dropped out, which is sad because she cared about him. She wanted to see him succeed. She's a really good person. Fallon is a really good person.
You deserve the world,
all that weight. And then he kind of dropped out and is like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it sucks because she gained like 45 pounds, or something like that. And she had to lose the weight without a client. And that was hard for her, but she did it. She looks great now. I think she's married, has a kid, and living her best life. So, but yeah, that was kind of sad. People were mad at him, but he had his own circumstances, his own issues. I didn't know him on a deep personal level.
Yeah.
But then on season 2, we had a trainer who dropped out because he was scared for his health. And so he gained like 20 some pounds, but like it got too scary for him and too hard. And he pulled the plug on it and he dropped out. So some things like that happen, and this is something that's risky. It's extreme, and then like I said, it's not for everyone, and it's it definitely comes at a cost, and some people are willing to pay that cost, and other people, I don't blame them for not wanting to do something like this, but it's TV, and people like extreme stuff on TV, so I get it.
I will give that gentleman a lot of credit for putting himself out there, because you go into it, with the hopes that you're going to be able to finish it all the way through. But it really puts you in a vulnerable position, because once you're out there, your image is out there, especially on a really popular TV show like this, you're open to ridicule and people judging you and judging your story and not really understanding where you're coming from. And that's the part that's really sad for me, because I happen to have like more on the empathy side for somebody like him, because even though he didn't finish it, it's like he also, put himself out there in a way that most people wouldn't. A lot of people that are criticizing him wouldn't put themselves out there like that. You know what I mean?
That's a good way to look at it, and I think that's fair, because people are so mean when they see one episode and they kind of judge a person, put them in a box, and label them this or that, and it's not fair because you don't see their whole story. Like, I love Brene Brown, and one of the quotes that she's said that sticks out to me is, "It's hard to hate someone up close," meaning sitting down with someone face to face and hearing their story, listening with empathy, you get to see a different perspective. And unfortunately, when you get TV or social media, you get a limited amount of like what you see, and you judge them based on what you see, and thinking you know their whole story, and you don't. And that's why I love the book, The 4 Agreements. Don't make assumptions is one of the 4 agreements. And I think we make too many assumptions about people because we're too quick to judge with social media and TV shows. We're like, oh, we see this person's political affiliation, like, oh, that person's this, or someone's religion, or the color of their skin. We label them, and we don't even know their story. So it's important to get to know someone's whole story before judging them. I think that's my perspective.
So crazy, like your ability to take a step back and understand everybody's perspective. Do you feel like that became stronger after doing this challenge? I mean, obviously it did, but I mean, even looking back now, do you look at it with even like a larger set of eyes and more understanding for people? Looks like you're talking about from political standpoint, from all spectrums of understanding people.
I would say it started from Fit2Fat2Fit, which changed my perspective on a lot of things. And then it had to do more with my own personal journey, doing the inner work on myself. So some people know this, some people don't. But after I went through Fit2Fat2Fit, about 5 years later, I went through a divorce after 10 years of marriage, and I left my religion that I grew up in around the same time. And those two things caused me to hit my rock bottom. And it was there that I had to do some self-discovery. And that's where I started going to therapy, and I hired a life coach and started meditating and journaling and doing a gratitude practice and positive affirmations and, reading books and podcasts and just learning more about why I was the way I was and why I struggled with the things I struggled with. And it was my own personal journey that really opened my eyes to the importance of taking a step back and having empathy for myself, first and foremost, learning to love who I was, because, I realized I grew up in a culture that developed a lot of self-hate, a lot of shame, a lot of self-hate, and that motivated me to do hard things, but it came at the cost of this internal war that existed all the time. If I'm not good enough, if my body like looked good, I would be like, I'm still disgusting, I'm still ugly, I'm still unworthy. No matter what, it never filled this hole. It never filled the void that was there. I think a lot of us go through life with that. And so I would say a lot of this perspective that I have now has come from my own personal journey, but it started with Fit2Fat2Fit, which then the divorce happened and leaving my religion. And then that's where my real journey, I would say, started, was after that.
This is a really good opportunity for me to share with you Michael Henderson's story. He's actually the founder of WOLFpak.
Oh, cool.
A few years ago, he actually started this company out of his garage, and he had just overcome cancer. He was diagnosed with cancer. He overcame it. And then he had this, introspective introspective conversation with himself, like, what mark have I left on the world? And he felt like he hadn't yet left his mark. So he decided to start this brand, and he started out of his garage with his family, his wife and his daughters and his son. They all just rallied together, and they just literally started this out of his garage, and it blew up like crazy. And he didn't even tell his story about his cancer or anything like that until the brand had already blown up. He literally just opened up about this like 5 months ago. Wow. And it's posted on the YouTube channel and everything. So now that's what, we're really trying to bring people like you in to tell your story, because it's really, that's really what we're about, is, really just helping people who have really overcome a lot. And the biggest thing that he says, and I think you probably would agree with this, is you learn the most about yourself when there's a huge disruption in your life, right? Like, it's almost like so many people live so long suppressing things that they don't realize they're suppressing. And it almost takes this humongous disruption in your life to unlock things that maybe were always there, but that big disruption kind of rattle things up and makes you have this self-reflection that you didn't realize you needed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think that ties back into what I was saying about, experiences shape your beliefs. And I really do think that, unfortunately, traumatic, events sometimes rattle you to the core, to where it forces you to change. Yeah. And that could be a divorce, it could be cancer, it could be a death in the family. Like I said, it could be all kinds of things. But that adversity, which would break a lot of people, you have the option to look at it as happening to you, right? This why me, the victim mentality. And I empathize with people that get stuck there, because it's justified that they feel that way based on horrible things that can happen. I know a lot of people that have had some really horrible things happen to them. If you don't want to stay stuck in the victim mindset and you want to grow, you have to start looking at it as this happening for you, so that you can learn something from it, grow from it, and not be defined by that thing. And that takes effort, takes courage, takes bravery, takes getting uncomfortable, doing the hard work, instead of just staying stuck there. And I think there's value in it, but I don't wish it upon anyone. I don't wish my daughters go through, some hardships just so they can learn lessons from it. But at the end of the day, that's how you learn. I could try and help them navigate through life by talking to them about, like, hey, don't do this. But until they experience it, and they're like, wow, okay, I understand now what you're trying to say, Dad. It's hard to let go of like that control of like having people you love go through hard experiences. But sometimes that's how we need to grow, unfortunately.
I agree. Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that the biggest disruptions, they're going to teach you the most about yourself, for sure. Right.
Amen.
You share a lot of awesome things on your social media.
Oh.
I love how the ones that you have pinned are like amazing. Like this one right here, you're like really showing your process, you're showing your struggle, you're showing like what went into it.
Yeah.
Did you were you like so grateful that you had all this professional photography and cinematography to help you to help follow your journey along, so that you can look back at it now and be like, oh my gosh, what the heck did I do?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. The first journey I did in 2011, I didn't have professional footage. It was just me and my wife, like just winging it with I would do my own YouTube videos. You could go back and look at how horrible they were, but people loved it. The second time around in 2020, when I did the second time, I had a full marketing team. I had a full camera crew, like documenting everything.
Yeah.
I have enough footage there if I wanted to make a documentary out of it, but I just, I haven't pulled the trigger on that just yet. But ultimately, that, it is kind of like a journal to kind of go back and look at those videos and be like, wow, I can't believe I did that. But it's also, it's cool. We live in a world now that we can capture so much and have so many memories through video, and it's good and it's bad. It comes at a cost. So it's like, oh, I wish, like if you and I, who are older, let's say older, we're not old, but we're older, we didn't go through middle school and high school with smartphones. And I'm glad, because
I know. I know. I say this all the time, right?
Yeah.
Same. I swear I'm so glad that I did not have a smartphone when I was in grade school, because all of that is like memories that I can remember without having anyone see it. It's not published anywhere. It's just, you get to just have it up here, right?
Amen. Yep.
I know. Well, I think that is an interesting point. I mean, we live in such a digital world, and judgment is so huge in society. It's like, I feel like, so when you first did this, there was no Instagram, right? I'm trying to remember when Instagram started. No,
2011,
there was,
Instagram. It was just Facebook and YouTube mostly.
which really changes things, okay? Because when you first did this, there was no Instagram, and that's where a lot of people's personalities, or personas, should I say, that's where a lot of people's personas really live right now, is on Instagram, and I mean TikTok, and but I think Instagram is probably the biggest in at least our generation right now. And back then, when there was no Instagram, it's like, people, you don't really know exactly what was going on. So for example, your decision to do this wasn't like skewed by like, oh my God, if I do this, I might be popular. Oh, if I do this, I might, this might take off. This might get a lot of likes. This might get a lot of views. Like, that's not even crossing your mind. Like, your doing this genuinely stemmed from your like inner desire. Now, I will say, your second time doing it, would you agree that maybe a little tiny bit of it was triggered by potentially the fact that you had a lot of eyes on you? A lot of people might enjoy watching you go through the journey again. You know what I'm saying?
Good question. And this is exactly why I decided to do it a second time, was because the technology wasn't there. And a lot of people only heard about Fit2Fat2Fit after the fact. They didn't get to see the day-to-day updates of Insta stories and live streaming and TikTok videos, and because people, like, they just heard about it after the fact.
Right.
This is why I want to do it again, because I had a larger audience. I had more attention on me. There was more platforms to stream it on and showcase really what went into the day-to-day life of what it was like to gain weight and then lose weight, and how it affected me, my kids, my girlfriend at the time. That was a kind of chaotic. We went through a breakup during it. But so I wanted people to be able to see it and really feel why I was doing this and how it affected me. And so hopefully it would carry over into other people seeing it and be like, oh, Drew does this. He drinks 3 beers a night and he eats the food that I'm eating.
Yeah.
No wonder it's affecting him. Maybe that's how it's affecting me. Maybe I should follow him on the journey back to fit, and maybe I should make some lifestyle changes. Yeah. That was my hope, was to use the technology to really showcase to the masses. This is what it entails, like a day-to-day, like, it took me 8 months of gaining and losing the weight. So I did use technology to kind of get my message across.
Yeah. You kind of brushed over this a couple times, and you don't have to share it if you don't want to.
Sure.
But you're like, I'm here, let's go. Yeah. You brushed over the fact that you had issues in your relationship. Like, what exactly was it? Because this is interesting for people who maybe, overweight and wondering, like, maybe this is something contributing to relationship problems or whatever. Like, what was the reason? Like, what did it have to do with your doing the challenge, or like, was that a catalyst? Like, tell me. If you don't want to share, that's okay.
No, I'm an open book. Let's talk about 2 different situations. One was my marriage, and then the second one is my relationship with my girlfriend for the second one.
Okay. We
didn't divorce because of anything to do with the TV show, the weight gain journey. She could care less about my body being overweight. She loved me still the same. It had nothing to do with that. We didn't get divorced until 2014-ish. And so that was years after Fit2Fat2Fit happened. And I talk about openly why I went through that, but I don't know how much time we have to dive into that. But I will say, if you want to go deep into it, I have a podcast. Just Google Drew Manning episode 100.
Okay.
It'll show up the link of like what I went or why I got divorced, the specifics. And like I said, I'm a very open book. I own my story. But it goes into a lot of like, the culture I grew up in, the religion I grew up in, how that shaped my perception of myself and why, a lot of my behaviors led to self-sabotage. And so, but we can go into the details of that only if you want to. The second one is interesting because we did break up in the middle of my journey. She didn't break up with me because I was overweight.
Right.
But I will say that it affected me more than I anticipated, being overweight, because here's what happens when you live an unhealthy lifestyle and you eat junk food and you're not sleeping well and you're not managing your stress and you're eating unhealthy junk food and you're not exercising. It carries over into your personality, how you show up for your person, for your people, like you're in your relationships.
Right.
What I mean by that is, let's say you're eating a bunch of junk food, you're drinking alcohol, you're not sleeping well. Well, that's going to do a number on your hormones. And when your hormones are off and out of whack, your personality is going to shift. So my testosterone dropped really low and my cortisol was really high all day, right? And so your ability to handle stress when you're living an unhealthy lifestyle is severely diminished. So I was probably more reactive with my girlfriend. I was more reactive with my girls. I was not my best self. I think we all can admit that when our physical health is bad and unhealthy, we are not our best selves. It's hard to show up empathetic, kind, understanding. When you're not sleeping well, you're stressed out, your cortisol's through the roof, and you're living on junk food and you're not exercising. You're not your best self in your relationships. And so, yes, maybe the way I was not my best self. Break up with me because I got fat, but there were some determining factors that there's some things that factored into that of why we broke up.
This is the sacrifice I'm talking about. And I mean, I think the unintended yet intended consequences of you going through this challenge was you sacrificed yourself. And of course, you didn't intend to affect your relationship, but that is kind of what par for the course for somebody who is not their best version of themselves, right? And you diving yourself into that, I would say, that's the sacrifice that you made. That's a huge, huge sacrifice. Talk about really creating some empathy.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of what both of these journeys taught me. So the second time was just as humbling in a different way. But yeah, this is why I don't have any regrets. It's made me into the man I am today. How I show up in this world is completely different. I understand the importance of making someone feel safe and seen and heard and understood. And I can't do that unless I've done the work on myself. And I am a huge proponent of doing the inner work, not just working out all the time, because that doesn't really fill that void that I'm talking about. And that's where doing the inner work can really help out, of learning to love yourself as you are, while still trying to work on the best version of you. It doesn't mean you stop working on yourself. But I think there's something to say for, like I said, I grew up with a lot of self-hate mentality and use that to push myself to do hard things. And it works for a season or two, but it doesn't bring long-lasting fulfillment. And this is why I'm such a big proponent of self-love. And I know it's not very manly or macho to talk about, but I promise you, for me personally, to go from self-hate to using self-love as motivation, not in an egotistical way, but an empathetic way of understanding why I am the way I am, has really helped me show up as a better dad, a better human, and one day a better future partner for someone. Hopefully, that's my hope. But it's really humbled me to the point where I've realized, okay, these are the lessons that I needed to learn, and I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
But now I get to choose how I show up, and I get to, when you own your story, instead of your story owning you, you get to write the ending to your book. And that's what's so cool about, even though it's scary, doing the work on yourself is hey, I'm going to show up and I get to write how my story ends and become the hero of your own story. That's what's so cool about this perception that I have. And it's powerful. It's not easy. It comes at a cost of being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is not easy in our society, but especially for men. But it's really empowered me, and I embrace vulnerability as a strength now. So.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I feel like we didn't even tap into the layers of everything with you. Sure. I mean, we kind of brushed a little bit on, you know, why you started, about your TV show, how it affected you and your relationships. But I feel like there's really so much more. And I know you share a lot of that on your platform. So do you want to just share, tell us where we can find you, where you share more of your story? Because I know that people watching this are going to want to know, like, where do I find him? Where do I find more of this story, the inside scoop?
Yeah, I mean, all my social media is the same. Fit2Fat2.
It's hard to miss, right?
Yeah, it's only one. Fit2Fat2Fit. On all my social media handles, my website as well. You know, and I talk a lot about something I call conscious fitness now. Even though my brand is Fit2Fat2Fit, if you heard any of the stuff that I was talking about today, a lot of it comes from my conscious fitness perspective, where yes, I still value health and fitness, but like I said, from a place of self-awareness and self-love and empathy, it's a different approach than what you typically find from, a guy with muscles and tattoos. But I love it.
Yeah, you talk about all kinds of stuff. My gosh, breath work.
I'm a big proponent.
Yeah, you were talking about that. Somatic breath work, sexual health,
very important.
amino acids. You share a lot with your audience, and I definitely want to give that a shout out because you have a really great voice. And I mean, you know how like so many people, they talk about these things, but maybe it doesn't hit quite the same, because with you, the thing that makes you so unique is that everything that you talk about, it hits different to me anyway, because you went through so much to have the perspectives that you have, that when you talk about something like, healing from the inside, you talk about like how you're healing, self-love, you talk about these things, but you're talking about that from this huge perspective of life experience that you've had that most people are never going to even know about. They're not even ever be close to experiencing what you've put your body through. So to me, that just makes it that much more powerful, Well,
thank you. I appreciate you letting me kind of speak my truth on the show and, talk about all the things that are important to me. And, if I didn't answer all the questions and you want to do this again, I'm down to answer more questions, but I appreciate you having me on, Wendy. And it's a pleasure talking to you. And hopefully, people watching this and listening to this will gain some value out of it at the end of the day.
Well, honestly, you answered all my questions, and I have more. I want to know more about you. If it ever works out, I'd love to have you come out here. We're in Huntington Beach.
Oh, I love Huntington Beach.
Really? Okay. Well,
yeah.
I'll talk to you offline, because I'm actually doing something else here that I would love to bring you in on. So that's another project that I'm working on that would love to have you be a part of. I mean, your story on the surface is incredible, but I bet your story under the surface is even more amazing. So I want more.
Well, thank you. Yeah, appreciate you.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate you so much. And you know what? It is time for us to, I would love to talk forever, but we are going to say goodbye. And I want to tell everybody to make sure that you head to wolfpak.com for all your backpack, duffel bag, meal management needs. We have the absolute best in the world. And Drew, thank you again so much for being on our show. So appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
You guys. Bye.